be asking you some questions that Yasin, of course, asked. You can see these on the slide. But what I want you to be aware of is that systems thinking and systems theory, it is not a theory in the way you are used to. It is a tool that you use to apply to systems. It is a type of lens to look at existing systems. So it itself is not a theory in the sense that you are accustomed to. There are some common questions that Yasin asked, and we'll be looking at these throughout the presentation. For example, the foundational component of systems thinking and theory, because remember, all the theories that we're looking at in this course are said to be foundational to human resource development, and systems thinking and theory is one of them. All right, so of course, we'll be questioning the foundational aspect of ST&T. Then we'll be asking if there are disconnects between X, Y, for example, between 2012, what he found, and 2026, what we are now seeing. We'll be asking if there's a disconnect between what the literature says versus what is happening in practice. These are all things we'll be thinking of and asking you, of course, to participate in. In addition to bearing in mind that ST&T is not a theory in the way you are used to thinking, I also want you to bear in mind that a system is to be thought of as a collection of connected variables or elements. So anything, therefore, can be a system. All right. So the nervous system, we are used to, we learned that in biology, because all the body parts along the nervous system work towards the same goal. And you can think of other systems as we go throughout tonight's presentation, and I'll be introducing you to one for us to look at together. Now, the background of systems theory and thinking, who would have contributed the most? Yasin was the one who did the research, presented it, and really questioned it. But Carl Ludwig von Bertalanffy, who I might call von Beethoven, but he is credited as being instrumental to systems thinking. All right, so it's interconnected, as I said, nonlinear, which means not in a particular order, dynamic, adaptive. These are terms that we'll be using throughout the presentation. And of course, Carol will be the one to start us off this evening. But before that, let us look at the synopsis. So we'll be looking at 4 main points. We'll be looking at the foundational aspect of a systems thinking and theory. Then we'll be looking at what we have got, what the literature calls a theory practice gap, what happens in theory versus what we do in the HR boardroom. And we'll also be looking at the linearity of, that is, I'm coining that word, that's my word. We'll be looking at the linearity of systems theory. As I said, linear means in a straight line, you have this, then this, so you must have this. We'll be questioning if that is how it works in practice. And finally, we'll be looking at what should be taught, what is taught, what could be taught. So let's start with the first one, the foundational aspect, by Carol.
Thank you very much, Tamika. So we'll be looking at the system theory, and system theory is accepted conceptuality. All right, so the first main idea, which is coming from this article, is that the system theory is widely accepted conceptually as a foundation of human resource. But the question is, whether is it truly used in practice in HRD literature, organization, and are often described as system made up of interrelated parts such as the people, the process, culture, leadership, and structure. Because of this many theory, scholars argue that system theory should naturally guide HRD interventions. However, what Yasin's points out is that even though the language of complexity, interdependence, and holistic thinking is frequently used, the actual practice of HRD does not always reflect this systematic approach. So in other words, the theory is accepted in principle, but not always applied in reality. Right? Let's now look at the critical reflection of system theory thinking as foundation. So the two primary systems exist within organization. You have operational, which is formality standardization and business performance. You have entrepreneurial, which is innovation, learning, and growth. It is in the tension that occurs between the operational system, pushing for administrative efficiency, and entrepreneurial systems, pushing for creativity, learning, and growth, that innovation and adaptability are enabled, which was cited in page 24 of the article. Traditional role of HR was optimizing human capital strategies, right?
There, in addition to this, what we want to identify is that the author, Arena and Ulbein, and they wrote theirs in 2016. What they indicated is that when you have the entrepreneurial system, it is over here. When you have the operational system, it is over here. Despite there being two systems operating in and of themselves, what they are recommending is that there should be some sort of connection between the systems, and it is that space that they call the adaptive space that is where HRD should really function. The adaptive space is where HRD should aim to operate within, because that is where they get the best of both worlds, the entrepreneurial and, of course, the operational. And we know that we should remember at all times that HR, they're equally employees. So yes, they're representing us as employees, but they themselves are employees. And as such, they have to be mindful of the operational side. But at the same time, as an employee, they have to be mindful of the entrepreneurial side. And of course, this is what Carol spoke about, the tension. So they're recommending that they operate within the adaptive space. If that is the case, all right, so remember, we learned that systems work together. If that is the case, now there's a thinking that says AI is going to take over all our jobs and make us obsolete. If this is the case, and the human-computer interaction is a system, will this come to pass? How can this come to pass, ever? Let's start with Tobia.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, thank you so much. Will humans ever be made obsolete by the robots?
So, in my estimation, it cannot happen as a result of one, humans are who would now be in charge of making machines, robots, even the AI interaction. There needs to be a human element to it. We have to manipulate these systems in order for it to work for us. So while some jobs may become obsolete by virtue of, what we program these robots and AI technologies to do, there still needs to be a human part of it that actually puts in the commands that ensures that what is being done is of the same quality as if a human were doing it physically. So there still needs to be that human element in it that makes it work at its optimal level.
All right. Thank you. Andre, your hand is up.
Yes. Hi, good night again, everyone. I want to say that I strongly agree with Tobia. And also the thing about it, and something that I want to make clear, there's a difference between AI and robotics. There's a big difference between the two. But in terms of AI,
the question is asking about human-computer interaction. All of them. The question is asking about human-computer interaction, so all of them.
Yeah. So while they're different, robotics, AI is different. The truth is AI is going to take some jobs. It's not going to take all. some things that are repetitive, AI will be the driver of this coming in the future, especially repetitive tasks. That's no doubt. That is coming. But with everything, there have to be, as Tobias said, a human element to it. A human must interact with it, whether it's from the development stage, being the developer behind it, whether it's being the user who's using it, or somebody who's just generally managing the AI itself. So
And there's a
humans,
specific reason for that. And I want to bring it back to the theory that we're looking at. It's because it's a system. It is a
exactly,
system, and yes, and every element within the system is relevant and will continue to be relevant once that system remains as it is. So, as Andre gave several examples, today we may be interacting with the robots or the AI this way, but because we are in a system, tomorrow something may change and we have to interact with them in a different way. So because we are a system, we will always have a role to play. Thank you so much, Toby and Andre. Carol?
Thank you very much. That was a mouthful of discussion. So let's continue on the second idea, the theory practice gap. So this means that although systems thinking is widely supported in theory, it is not always applied in human resource development, right? It is not always applied. Yasun found that many human resource department interventions are still very narrow and linear. For example, organizations may focus on one training program, one single training program, without considering the culture of the people, the leadership type, or even the environment itself. So even though the field talks about complexity, the actual practice often remains simple and structured, right? So this article, it basically describes this as the difference between what we say we believe and what we actually do in reality.
So let us examine this on a critical level. So we've heard what Yasin says, and we are now going to take us from 2012 to 2026. Now, Carol explained what Yasin says. To test your understanding, let's ask Tanisha to summarize what Carol said, or to tell us what she would have learned.
Excuse me? A joke. All right. So basically what I got was the trainings are focused on, or the companies are now focusing on one training per, how it go? Catch my off guard. Wait. All right, so basically, let me see what you have here. So the trainings are tailored, is that the word? So you do training based on a specific need. No, instead of back then everybody just flinging a training. Did I?
Thank you. I love that flinging a training thing. Thank you so much, Tanisha. Of course, training. We discussed training to great lengths last week because of Tobia and Andre's presentation. Training is intended to increase the human capital so we can make more money as an organization. Early, what Garavan et al., 2020, what they found is that early training, they looked at a direct link between the training and organizational performance. So that was the only thing research was testing for back in the day. Training and its relationship to organizational performance. However, research is moving towards investigating the relationship of external factors, or what else has a role to play in the training dynamic. All right, what does this really mean? In order for me to tell you that, to answer that question, we have to look at three specific components of systems thinking and theory. congruence, adaptation, and equifinality. Equifinality means there are different ways to arrive at the same end. So when your child come home and say, teacher said, they're ignoring the concept of equifinality because there are multiple ways to arrive at the outcome. Adaptation means based on what is happening in the environment, you are required to tailor your training to accommodate this information. We're not saying the content has to change, but how you train, perhaps the areas you cover, when you train, that sort of thing has to reflect what is happening in the external environment. And congruence. Now, congruence means that organizational performance is directly proportional to the equilibrium of multiple organizational components. So everything has to be in balance within the organization. You can't have training too much in one area and that sort of thing. So that's what congruence means. So those three aspects of ST&T, adaptation, congruence, and equifinality. Now, Garavan et al. From 2020, they did their research and found that two things. There was no significant difference in terms of impact between the quantity and the quality of the training. Mega repeat, we never hear. It does not matter how much training the employee is exposed to versus the overall quality of said training. They found no significant difference on organizational performance. They also found that the research does not include national variables. And what does that mean? We're going to ask a question. If research does not, let's move to the next slide, please. If research does not find, if research does not investigate national variables impact on training, is there an actual theory practice gap? It's like a literal question. Okay, democracy has a place, but it is not in EDU 5044. So let's call a name. Tobia, go ahead.
Wow. All right. So the premise is that no research exists to speak to the role that national variables play and organizational
Because remember that
systems
research
develop. So
earlier
does that
just
mean?
Mhm.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Remember that training before looked at only the relationship between the training and organizational performance, nothing else. And we're saying, how can you say there's a theory practice gap if those are the two things you look at? For example, you
Right,
don't look at
exactly.
how
There's no national survey done to see the impact. You're not seeing where, okay, these companies have been surveyed and they are, multinational companies. So we're getting research data. So there's no research data. So really, is there a gap if there's no data? In a sense.
Yes. Is there really a gap? And we're not saying a gap
Right.
exists. We're not saying a gap does not exist.
Does not
We
exist.
are right. We're simply saying, does the gap actually exist? If the research that is required to say there's a gap doesn't really, it's not all encompassing. For example, when we say national variables, we can be looking at a policy, a government policy. How does this government, how does this government policy impact organizational performance?
And
that sort
then
of
you're
thing.
wondering, where is there something? Because I'm wondering, is there something in Ministry of Labor that speaks to the fact that there is a responsibility? So, for example, for organizations to train people, or if it is just through organizational policies and systems that are in place, they mandate this to happen. I don't even think there's any national dialogue where that is concerned.
Thank you, Tobia. Andre wants to answer you, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. So there is something that speaks to it, and of course, it is our staff order and the public sector something. I don't remember the last part of it. But these speak to training for staff members, and that we need to equip our staff and develop our staff. And it also speak to the persons that we should train. As I said, I think last week, is that you'd have to be in the company for 90 days before you're eligible to participate in certain trainings and stuff like that. So yeah, so
So
the
that is
staff
something that
order,
exists nationally.
yes, the staff order
Within
and
public
the,
sector.
yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
You have to get into you're in the wrong system, Carol. Tobias, sorry. Remember, so because we're looking at systems theory tonight, your system does not include
Wow.
some of these things, perhaps. But thank you so very
Wow.
much for your contributions,
Yes,
Andre and Tobia. Tobia, you can go look at it after class. Carol?
definitely.
Thank you. So the next main idea, dominance of linear epistemology, right? So the term epistemology, I will gather that information after. This means we tend to think in straight lines. Input leads to process, process leads to output. But what do you think? What's your thought? A good example is the ADDIE model, right? A lot of us are privy to this one. You know, it's ADDIE, the acronym: analysis, design, development, implement, evaluation. So this model is very useful, but it assumes that problems are predictable and controllable, right? System theory, on the other hand, says organizations are non-linear, right? They are non-linear, they are dynamic and constantly changing. Let me go again. While ADDIE is useful, but it assumes that a problem is predictable and controllable, systems theory, on the other hand, says organizations are non-linear, they are dynamic and constantly changing. So there's a conflict between how organization really operate and how human resource development models are actually designed. So let's look into it deeply now.
All right, let us look into it deeply. Two things. So our article is it was published in a very philosophically heavy journal. And as such, you find terms like epistemology a lot, because epistemology is a philosophical term. And really what it is it examines knowledge. For example, one of the questions it asks is, are you justified to believe this thing? Do you have a justified belief? Is your opinion, the decision that you have arrived at, are you justified in having this opinion? So of course, logic would have to come into play and that sort of thing. So epistemology, as I said, it's a philosophical term. So what Yassin is doing is looking at the validity of the position that has been taken. So HRD, as Carol explained a while ago, said this is how we do things in a linear way. But you expect outcomes using this method. However, you forget that you're using humans. Are humans predictable? No animate object to my non-educated mind. I'm not an ologist of sorts, you know, I'm no great biologist or anything like that. But to my understanding, you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with life. You can't have such a prescriptive approach. And I do not think this epistemology or this opinion is justified. And I have found Arina and Ulbin, who also agrees with me. Let us examine this article to get to the bottom of that. So remember, we spoke about the entrepreneurial, and we spoke about the operational systems acting independently. And Arina and Ulbin, they're suggesting that HR should function in the space between. Now, in addition to the two kinds of systems, in addition to the space they create, there are two other important variables within organizations having to do with the people, the you, the me. There are clusters or groups of people. They say there are two kinds of clusters, cohesive clusters. Cohesive clusters are people who work within. For example, let's look at COM 5000. COM 5000 was made up of master students and PhD students. It was made up of the WTE students, the CTE, right? The CTE, it was made up of several different master's programs. So what they're saying is that within the whole COM 5000, we had individual pockets of groups. So WTE would be one cohesive cluster. CTE would be a cohesive cluster, the PhD students and so forth. And they're saying there is another kind, the brokerage. When you broker, what you're doing is finding an element that brings clusters together. So I may be in the WTE cluster, but I may know someone in the CTE cluster and we're in a group. So I can leverage the resources of my WTE cluster and pull on the resources of the CTE cluster because I am sort of like a bridge. And as such, Ulbin and Arena, they are recommending that this is what HR's practice should look like. Not a straight line running like this, but this sort of dynamic yet controlled environment is what HR should really be looking towards. Let's examine the fourth critical point.
You might be wondering why curriculum reform and work readiness. You're wondering why. You must be wondering why. Definitely, I know that. I can see Andre thinking, Tobia pondering, Tanisha questioning it. Well, let's examine it. So Yasun examined HRD programs and found that very few universities actually teach system thinking as a full course. Very few, right? And this means students learn about system theory conceptually, but they may not learn how to apply it, right? Because of this, when professionals enter the workplace, they often return to the simple models. So the theory practice gap may begin in the classroom. The author recommends that human resource programs should include more training in 1, system thinking, 2, complexity theory, 3, systems dynamics, and the 4th one, interdisciplinary learning. Let me go again. Yasun would recommend that in HRD programs, it's best to have training in system theory, complexity theory, system dynamics, and in interdisciplinary training, right? And you'll see how we examine it critically. Let's look at it.
All right, so if we could go back to the previous slide, Carol, you mentioned some other theories. And it is important to know that they are not so much components of, Tanisha, I see a hand coming. It is important to know that they are not so much components of systems thinking and theory, ST&T, but remember we said ST&T is like a lens they can use to apply to something. You use it to see, to look at something in a way. And ST&T is being recommended as the lens through which you look at these other theories that are that they're tangential to each other, and as such there is there is a sort of interdependence among each other. Tanisha.
Okay. Hi again. All right. So I just want to make sure, based on what I'm seeing here, right, with the curriculum reform, based on what Carol mentioned, are you saying that with the reform, it's like going into the universities and ensuring that the curriculum makes people employable in terms of what it is that is offered, and it's not just okay, you get a degree, but you can't make decisions. Like for instance, okay, so yesterday my daughter had a test, and it was something when she was explaining it to me, she said it is something similar to systems thinking. I don't remember the name of the course, sorry. But she says it's mathematics, but it's basically telling you or helping you to make decisions when you get into the workplace. So because I believe back in the days, I won't get too old, but back in the days, persons were were leaving universities, but they weren't able to actually go into an organization and be able to make decisions because the curriculum was just flat. It didn't have many areas that would result in grooming you, so to speak, to make decisions. Like for instance, persons would say that UTech offers more on the job, technical, not technical, but advanced training versus a UE where it's just theory versus actual. Yeah. Is it something similar to that this would fall under in my layman terms based on my understanding?
All right, thank you for your question, Tanisha. So systems thinking and systems theory, which by the way are two independent components that have been put together. For example, let's go back to come back to where we are. Systems theory is the examination of systems components. Remember, we said a system is a collection of like-minded components working towards the same good. So systems thinking is appreciating that these components come together to form a system, and you are looking at the relationship of these individual components within the system, in addition to how this system operates within its environment. All right, so that's systems thinking. Now, systems theory is the study of systems. All right, and we want to say that systems theory exists in other disciplines. So specific to us, we're defining systems theory as the study of systems, HR systems, because that's what we are studying. All right, and that's how Carl von, not Beethoven, Bertalanffy came to be considered as sort of like the discipline's founder. All right, and there are three types of systems: hard, soft, and dynamic. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because it is necessary to know that it's not just one variable, it's not just one component that matters. There is nothing I can think of, and I perhaps could ask you to pontificate as well. Is there something that happens or exists independent of something else? For example, a fire. Let's take fire. You need three things. You need the fuel, the thing that is going to be burnt. You need oxygen, and you need combustion. Carol, am I right? Carol, tell me if I'm right.
Absolutely. You're correct.
All right. So take away any one of these things, and the fire will disappear. That is how systems are. So when we say curriculum reform, the words have denotative meanings like thinking and that sort of thing, don't think of them in their denotative English dictionary meaning, but they are now jargon within the field of HR, and as such, they have been given their own meaning. Yawson specifically recommends some courses, and there's a reason he recommends these courses. So it's really about critical thinking. If you can't appreciate, if the HRD professional cannot appreciate that they're working within a system, which is why Ulbin and Arena said, you have to give up the entrepreneurial over here and the operational over here. So you have to see them as being relevant. Both of them are relevant, but they can work together. It is necessary for the HRD professional to see things through a systems-oriented lens. And that is what Yasni is saying, in order to develop that kind of mindset when you are in school, so that when you go to the world of work, you can actually apply a systems-oriented view. He's recommending the introduction of some courses. For example, he says at the undergraduate level, you can have a course called Introduction to Systems Theory and Thinking. You understand? And it would introduce students to what people do within HR and what exists outside. So the student can bridge the gap between this is what obtains, this is what exists in the world, how can I make them go together? He recommends, for example, advanced systems theory and thinking in HRD. So, and this would be a PhD level type course to make sure that at this level, you have a firm understanding of what it means to be an HRD professional in 2026, operating in the adaptive space between entrepreneurial system and operational system, leveraging the benefits of the brokerage cluster and the cohesive cluster. All right, so that is really what he means. Let us look at this critically. If, like I said, and there's nothing that functions independent of itself. You need to be a part of something, and HRD needs to leverage that, because like we said last week, we're not doing this because we don't have nothing to do with time. We're not doing this because we want to practice moving muscles or something. We're doing this because we really want to increase profit, you know, and we believe that if profits are increased, we get better pay, we get better benefits, we benefit in some way. So it is an interdependent relationship. So in order to do that, remember, we looked at adaptation, congruence, and what is the other one? Adaptation, congruence, and equifinality, which is the different ways of achieving the same goal. We looked at those three components of SD&T. Adaptation is that one that talks about the environment. And when we say environment, epistle is a good way, some say pistel, a good way to approach it, because we do not just mean the competitive environment, we mean the political environment. If you remember, the research shows that no survey exists to capture the influence of national factors on organizational performance. So you need to look at the political, for example, you need to look at the technological. We discussed the role of the human-computer interaction, that specific system in HRD. And it really boils down to the problem or the inability, the unwillingness to see HR as a system, several components, individual components, but working together towards one goal. And Yasni is recommending that once we do that, we will be on the right track. Carol?
Thank you very much. I want you to just take 30 seconds. 30 seconds, my fellow colleagues, and examine. My internet is telling me that it's unstable. Let me turn on the camera back. Just 30 seconds and examine the picture there. And by a show of hand, raise your hand and feel free to explain. 30 seconds. The counting begins now.
democracy has a place, but it is not within EDU 5044. Tanisha?
Tanisha, go ahead.
Sure. All right. So for an organization to perform, right? The leadership has to make strategic decisions. And a part of that strategic decision is where to allocate resources. Resources meaning funds, and also resources in terms of the workforce. So the organizational culture, I'm doing it backwards, in case. So in order to change the culture of the organizational culture, in order to change the culture, the organizations need to be more centered around training, workforce training, and that would let employees feel valued, feel uplifted and motivated, and of course building employee morals, because of course when you get trained and an organization is into training from the top of the organization to the bottom, it means that people are more educated, people are more acquainted with new stuff, so more ideas, profitability, everything will be higher, productivity, profitability. And so therefore, because persons are now being trained, the organization is becoming more competitive and marketable. They can now center training around the areas that that they see fit based on the departments and based on where the department needs to go.
Thank
So
you.
that is how I would look at this chart. I would take it from a different perspective than what the chart shows.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Tanisha. I see Tobia. Go ahead, Tobia.
All right, from here I can see that it is a cyclical diagram, and with any cycle, sometimes you can pick it up from any aspect, whether you're taking it from an organizational culture, or you're taking it from a leadership aspect, but it's a cycle and it goes all around and impacts at each level. But I'm gonna just take it from the organizational culture, because in order for organizational performance to be something that the organization is known for, it has to first start with a culture. It has to first start with what you're building, the ethos of the organization. What do they stand for? And with this, we will realize that, okay, there needs to be something that is put into organizational learning and development. And so there will be resource allocations. What type of resources, whether it is human, whether it is training resources, whether it's financial resources, whether it's learning resources, or resources that facilitate things like succession planning, that facilitates job shadowing, whatever it is, there will be resource allocation. And then, of course, you will have the leadership buy-in, which now makes decisions as to what will entail for, say, the financial year. And then, of course, it goes into the training design, what type of training, and also the training needs analysis that needs to be done at this level as well. And when we're saying that all of these things work together within that system that is being created, once it is successful, then automatically it will now boost employee morale. And you know what happens when employee morale is boosted? Because them get, an opportunity to ask for somebody to train there, so to learn from this person, it now shows other persons that this can happen, and now the cycle starts again, because now it will start from employee morale. When I see my persons getting certification, when I see my coworkers getting this, getting that, now I can say, you know what, I am going to put myself in line to be the next person that this benefits. So that's what I get from this.
Thank you very much for that, Toby. And I'll take Andre quickly. Go ahead, Andre.
All right. Miss Linda said quickly, so I'll be quick because Toby kind of set the platform already. So again, I believe that leadership decision, it basically shapes the direction, it shapes the policy, it shapes the priorities of the institutions that they're a part of and where we want to go. And where we want to go now will definitely shape the training or the competence level of the employees. What are the gaps that needs to be filled to ensure that we meet the leadership decision on our strategic objectives that are there? What are the training that our staff need to get there? And the thing about it, once our staff are trained and they now feel like they are a part of something big, they're a part of something, they have that sense of belonging. Now you see an increase in staff morale, meaning that they will find job satisfaction because they see where the company is investing in them to be better at what they do. They will also now begin to be more motivated, want to do more, want to be engaged more. They find a sense of purpose within this organization. And again, once they're at that level now, it now flows into the organizational culture. The shared culture of the organization can come out even further because they have that moral. Because again, the training and everything kind of set that standard, implement those things, start to mention them, show the value of them. So now they can all appreciate it. And then it comes to the most important part of it now is the funding, the budgetary allocation that are there so that these trainings can happen, that our staff can build morale, the share the values, and all of this come together. But what is critical for this to happen is the budgetary allocation, for people to understand that it is a cycle. If you spend a little here, you'll get more later. Amen.
Amen, my brother. Thank you for that one. So you see, it shows that the system thinking always looks at a bigger picture, right? The culture will affect the employee, the leadership, all of those things. And I loved it. I loved all the explanation. So let's move on. In summary, you're looking at the picture there, the matrix of disconnect. Is it foundational? Yes, in the theory. Is it practice? No, it's a myth. Is it taught? No, curriculum gap. Is it needed? Yes, for complex systems. So if we look at our discussion that we had today holistically, right? The contradiction becomes clear. We say system thinking is foundational. We agree it's necessary for complex organization. And we rarely teach it formally. That's the issue, right? So the real leadership question is not whether system thinking is foundational, is whether we are prepared to be operationalized by it. Are we prepared? I'm not hearing no answer. I'm not seeing any thumbs up. Have I lost anyone? So system theory currently is a foundational myth, a story we tell ourselves, but do not live by it. Thank you very much for having us. At this time, we'll take our questions and answer. Are there any questions for us?
Karil and Tamika, thank you for the presentation so far. I'm going to ask you to go back, right? Two things. You indicated at the beginning that we would understand that, what was it now, that diagram at the beginning. We didn't go back to that diagram. If you could just kind of help us to see what we're looking at here in this diagram.
All right, I can go first. I can take one of them. remember we spoke about the theory practice gap as the second main point, which is this bridge right here. You notice that the bridge is, there's a space that the roadway doesn't merge properly. At present, it appears as if you are unable to move seamlessly from theory, what you are told should happen, into the HR, into the organization. Because when you get there, it seems as if something else is being practiced. So there is a gap between the two sides, which is what we're looking at with this bridge here. But also what we're looking at is, in fact, I should let you tell me what it is that you are seeing, because you should by now be able to explain what it is that you're seeing because of the presentation. So let's take another image, for example, and you can explain what you are seeing.
Yeah, that's what I
Not you, miss. Not you.
I know that, but that's what I had hoped you would do. Because you had brought it up at the beginning, so for ending, you need to come back to that. You understand?
All right, so let's continue then.
Planned on that, but we wanted to hear the questions and answers, but we planned on that. Thank you very much, Miss.
Okay.
So you want us to continue, Miss?
All right. Well, if you were going to do questions and come back to it, fine. Do come back to it then and go do the questions and come back to it. But for me, as the the instructor, you're looking for that because you had brought it up at the beginning. And
Okay,
I thought you were ending. You get me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're here now, Miss, so we can stay.
Huh?
We're here so we can actually finish going through it.
Yeah, no, but if you are saying that you wanted to ask them to ask questions first before they came back to this, right? I would not have known that because I thought you were ending. You get me? So you can let them ask the questions and then you come back to this and end as you were planning to.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I'm sorry because I thought you had ended because you said you had ended and no for questions. I didn't know you were coming back to this.
All right, so.
All right, let me ask another question then. Go back to the systems, the diagram at the end. The systems, what do you call that? No, the systems diagram.
Yes, Dr. Ferguson, my computer froze.
Oh dear.
Escape. Wow.
As Carol was showing?
Yes, I'm presenting.
Oh, you are the one that doing the presentation. Okay.
All right.
Not that one, the one before that. Yes, systems diagram, right. Okay. All right, I'm just noting that persons had described it as a circular model. But when you look at this diagram closely, you will realize that everything points to one thing.
Organizational performance.
No.
And
training design.
Everything points to one thing. If you look at it clearly.
Everything is going towards training design.
Because we're saying it informs training design, Miss. That's what we're saying.
Everything, exactly. So I just wanted you to get it clearly because I'm not sure some persons picked it up because you looked at it and you saw these lines and so persons assumed, for example.
No, man. So I think for me, I said cyclical. So we're saying that it can be, it's like you can pick up from everything, but it informs the training design.
And Andre would have said it as well. He said that training would improve the skills, it motivate, and it better performance.
Yes.
Additionally, when I spoke about the environment in terms of the main point number 4, and I spoke about the environment looking at the political and the technological and so forth. And I mentioned the 3 components with adaptation being one of them, meaning whatever is happening in the environment has to be reflected in your training, in the makeup of the training as well. So I have an appreciation for what you're saying. Perhaps it was not overtly said, So it is necessary to bring it out very clear. Thank you for that, Miss.
Right. Right. Because the thing too is that in the context of this particular course, where we are looking at workplace learning and development, just to note that focus. And then if we look on it in terms of now training design, you know, being the, what should I say now, the central point here, even in terms of this, how just looking at our respective systems, to what extent are all of these elements factored into our training design and learning development within the organizations, even as they currently exist. All right, so that would be one of my questions, because you know, while it is we are looking at what should happen, and we are realizing that there is as you would have indicated, a practice gap, all right, between, you know, what we say should happen and what, you know, we say should happen in systems, and looking at how linear sometimes we can be. The question now becomes, as we look on our systems, the way in which we operate, because all of us operate within a system, all of us have certain roles, even as HRD practitioners, in what way, or somebody, you know, in charge of a team and so on. To what extent are these things factored in to the training, the learning and development that happens within, whether the unit that we work with or our overall HRD systems? To what extent are these things actually factored in? And that's something I would want us to explore. So beyond the theory now, looking at how we operate, how are these systems brought together within our you know, operations in HRD, in terms of the development? How do these things factor in, even in our real life situations?
You want me to answer it, Dr. Ferguson?
Yeah, anybody can answer. I'm just, you know, asking for reflection.
All right,
know,
so
that's what we are trying to, you know, just
let us not focus fully on the diagram, but as to what the question is asked, what extent
yeah,
does
the various
the factors-
systems, including these that you've identified here on the
So
diagram,
first,
but just general systems brought into bear.
So let's look at leadership. So leadership, it's twofold, meaning it tends to be direct and indirect impact on training and development, because they have to sit and come about thinking of meeting how they determine training, if training is a priority, if we need to give budget for training and all those things, and to buy the resources that are costly and it can impact the budget. So if they say that they can get a training for $100,000, but after dissecting the budget in lunch, vehicle, traveling, the resources for the training, that impacts it. And in terms of setting an expectation for learning, the culture might not be that in the organization in some instances. For example, like mine, it have to be something that drags the persons to want to learn. For example, if an upcoming promotional exam is coming up, you see a lot of person willing and eager to find notes and all these things and a particular training, and that's impact the employees mostly. Is it a strategic symbol in some organization? I would say yes and no for some. However, if a leader does not value learning, training becomes compliance, right? The persons will not want to gravitate to learning because the leadership doesn't want to put it out there that, all right, we have training for this, the budget is set for that, and the operational plan. In terms of, I look at organizational culture now. A lot of employees they don't have openness to learn. You have to put it to them in a particular way. You have to advertise it. It's basically you're marketing something, you're selling a product, but you have to market it so strategically that you drag them towards you. So that they have the urge and that willingness to want to learn the new skills, to want to apply it, and all of those things. And it also has some psychological impact as well. And you have to also garner that. But it's also collaboration. How do I get Karel and Tamika, Tanisha, Tobia to be of Dr. Ferguson Leadership Forum? How do I get them to be able to disseminate all those skills that they learn to the other employees, right? So the moral of the employee moral, in terms of training, it can have a employee to feel more motivated. Yeah, it can give them, instead of they say, boy, the next 2 years I'm gonna left the company, I'm tired of them. They will not want to say that. They want to give that company 20 more successful years, right? They want to say, I'm tired, I need a transfer, I need a new job. They don't want to leave because of how they set the bar high as it regards to training. The structure of the organization sometimes tend to affect things, but as I said, it's how you market it. How you market it. The time for training, the performance measurement you put to it, the incentives for skill application. You have to be able to market these things so the behaviors can change, the learning can be sustained, and they can be able to aid in other process. So I want to leave 2 more for the other persons, Dr. Ferguson, but that is my insight on it, basically.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. And all of those things are very reasonable in terms of how you are thinking through, because what we want is not just to be theoretical, but I want us to look to see, even in our own organizations, to what extent are these things really considered in how we design training. So you made reference to some things in your organization, for example, the culture, how some things, might not be aligned in a particular way. So if we are going to take on a systems approach within the organizations in which we operate, or those spheres where we have influence, how do we, in a realistic way, consider all of these things, noting as well that even in the paper, one thing that was said by Morgan is that the use of ST&T in HRD practice requires multidisciplinary approaches. And by its very nature, it needs to take a wide range of trends, actors, events, and patterns. It requires more investment in a wider range of staff skills, different organizational structure, and a different set of values and perspectives. All right, if we are really going to be looking at systems, making good use of systems theory, all right, in our approach. So it is how much wider do we have to look? What other trends and actors, events and patterns do we need to be bearing in mind in the training that we design and the learning that takes place in our workplaces, right? How do we intentionally factor all of these things in, or do we just, okay, yes, well, yeah, I think we need to do customer service, and we do customer service again. Is it really customer service that we need? All right, because with all the customer service training, is it really customer service that we need? And we would have identified that there are a number of what should I say, theories that undergird HRD. So we might be saying, all right, just looking at customer service and an example, and we keep doing customer service training every year. But if customer service training is being done and things are not getting better, is it really customer service training people need? Or might it be going to something related to the employee morale, but morale now connected to employees' thoughts, because there might be certain attitudinal things, certain psychological things that impact on what persons do. So even though there is general ideas about customer service, what is the underlying psychology that might be impacting on the worker? How do we get to those things that are impacting the worker, that we might need to do some mindset reset, right, in order that the other things can happen? So how do we factor in all of these other things as we are planning? And so it's just something I'm asking us to think about in our respective capacity as we are looking at learning, as we are looking at growth, as we are looking at training, even in our departments. What are we actually taking into consideration? What is feeding? What is informing the decisions that we take? To what extent are we looking at the wider systems, all right? The actors that are involved, the events, the patterns, the trends, the things that all inform, and determine, overall organizational performance that feed into this training. So yes, thank you so very much, Carol. And I just wanted us to, just look a little bit more closely at that, because very, very important.
Tanisha, your hand is up.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was going to answer the question that Doc asked, but since you
go
finished,
ahead,
it's
no,
okay.
give your input and we'll wrap up so the other group can come on, because we want to get out of here for night. So just give your input and the other group, yes.
Okay. You can show back the that slide, please. I was gonna say, all right, from my organization, right? In terms of the culture and learning from orientation, it is said that training is very important. What management has done, or what leadership, the decision that leadership has made, is that training is a part of your appraisals. Once you're off probation, you also qualify for they give you a budget so you can do training, whether it is to get your bachelor's if you don't finish, or to do your master's, or to do whatever programs that you want, especially if it's something that's going to benefit the company. They don't tie you in like most organizations, especially government, where you have to stay for like 5 years, but they do sponsor you. And if you've already accomplished all of those, then we have platforms like LinkedIn Learning and stuff that we have access to year-round in order to do training. And because of that, you find that the culture, like everybody is so into getting training or wanting to get trained, because all these trainings that is being done helps you to become marketable if you decide to leave. Not only that, but we also learn from each other. So if I do a training, I am able to go in front of my team and I can present what I've learned to my team so that my team can learn as much as I learn. And this is something that is done, I'll say, rotating. We rotate that information, or if I'm good at Excel, I can teach it to my my team members. So training is something that we do as a part of our goal, but also a part of our appraisals, to ensure that we get that grade that we need. Everything is tied into that little year-end bonus. So I would say the decision that management makes, yes, they allocate the resources in the proper way. And it also helps with the organizational culture, employee morale. Because we feel good, we're getting training, we have access to the funds for training. And of course, the organization performs and is marketable, and people expect a certain level of performance from the organization because of all of this. So that's my 2 cents on this chart again.
Okay, thank you so very much. It's always good to hear real life examples, in terms of how it actually comes together, because it does strengthen understanding. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, class. Thank you very much, Dr. Ferguson, for providing the forum for us. And we now end our presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. We give Carol and Tamika a hand for so ably taking us through that topic. All right, beautiful. All right, good. All right, I must note though that in the discussion, there are some people who have not participated at all. All right, so Jerome, Kimberly, let me see who else is there. There are a number of people who have not done anything. Lovell, Romario, Teresa, haven't heard from you. All right, so need to hear you in the other presentation, please. All right, because this needs to be a everyone needs to take part in what is happening. All right, and when you talk, it's part of what we call active learning. All right, and it does help. All right, thank you so very much. All right, so we are down to know, is it Chloe and let's see who that is. Let me see. Who's the other person?
Miss Teresa is with Chloe, but can I get a few minutes, please?
Okay, go ahead quickly, because I don't want to us to go over the time, because I know persons are concerned about that. All right, go ahead.
Remember to give her host privileges, Doc.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for the reminder. I'll do that. All right, so that's Teresa.
Yes, Miss, I'm just having a little bit of technical challenge here with my presentation. Begging you a few minutes, please, to sort it out.
Yes, I'll do that. I'm just making your co-host in the meantime.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. While Teresa is
Chloe, we saw the opportunities that were listed.
The article
Because the video is embedded, I don't want to go back to that. And so we saw the opportunities. And as we move forward, we are going to look at the challenges as stated in this article, as we reviewed it. It is said that human resource development is expected to help solve, and of course, the many tools offered by economics foundational direction for action can yield high utility, right? However, there are challenges. There are challenges, and integrating economics foundation into its theory building, research, and practices, along with the potential gains. We're going to be looking at some of these challenges, and namely, this article listed 4 challenges, and we can see them here. We have challenges at the individual level. We have challenges at the team level. There are challenges at as it relates to work processes. And of course, there are challenges at the organization level. So as we look at these challenges, we'll also be looking at, what HRD can do, right, in order to yield high utility in economics. And so the first challenge is individual level challenge. And here we're saying that at the individual level, HRD should treat employees as human capital investment and not just labor cost. As we delve in the article, it spoke to thinking of individuals as a labor commodity, with employers operating like, employees are traders in exchange for goods and services. And so we're saying we need to look beyond that. We need not to limit employees as if this is a transactional business, while in essence, some may consider same, but there is a greater reward if we look beyond that and invest into the individual, the employees themselves. Right? And so we're saying that HRD need to learn how to calculate financial return for developing individuals. And we saw that earlier in a nutshell in Chloe's presentation on the opportunities. We're also saying that making return on investment measurement a routine part of practice. Right? So ever so often we're saying, do your evaluation, do your assessment. I believe in our discussion last week, it was Andre who mentioned that so many times organizations limit the investment to the individual, thinking that they're going to lose out if that individual should leave the organization. But we should not look at it in that regard, because even if that individual leaves that particular organization and is still employed, especially within Jamaica, it is still contributing to our economic growth. It is still contributing to our country, right? It is still contributing to our development as a nation. So they're not losing. And so we want them to, move away from limiting the individuals and look at the bigger picture. And of course, there are challenges at the team level, right? The article again spoke to the emergence of work teams over individual performers as work changes, the workplace demand changes. And as a result of that, a lot of teams are formed in order to, yield higher results, higher output, greater success, higher utility, as the article suggested. And so we found that human resource development intervention through the organization development banner, specifically programs such as team building, self-managed work teams, cross-functional teams, 360 assessment, organization can undertake these activities in an effort to track economic performance and productivity at the team level, right? So we found that this was a challenge. And so we're saying that HRD need to learn more about the economics of team level intervention and performance output in a dynamic environment. There are some organization that is, change is the only thing that is constant, like change is ever occurring. And so we're saying these teams will exist for higher utility rather than limiting same. Let us evaluate, let us assess, right? Let us do the improvement where necessary, because we find that depending on the nature of the business, team contribute to the success of the business in a greater sense as opposed to an individual doing so. And so the next challenge that we found as well was the process level, the work process challenge. And as we, look closer as to what the authors were saying regarding work processes, we first delved into the definition of work process. And work process is a structured step-by-step sequence of tasks, methods, and activities designed to achieve specific organization goal. So often, when there is, underperformance or there's not great success, organizations are quick to look at the job and in some instances the individual. And we're saying, no, let us stop and study the work process instead of the people, right? Let us start with the work process, because once it has been determined that improvement is needed, a range of improvement options can be considered, such as improving the process efficiency, adding new technology, altering job roles and tasks related to improve the process, and training employee or people within the workplace within that process. I am aware that some organization has what is called a process measure activity, right? So you may have a process that is guided by a particular policy, but based on feedback, sometimes we will find that, it is there is persons complain, there's not great success. And so rather than looking at the individual, I say, let us measure this process. Let us measure this process. An individual or in the workplace may complain, certain activity may take too long. Let us measure the process time that this activity is expected to take, should take, where there is a delay, because oftentimes what I found is that in the real world is that you may have a process or a process time activity that says this activity should be completed in 10 days. However, when you measure that process, you will find that it exceeds 10 days. Why did it exceed 10 days? We are now able to go in on our process measure to say, okay, based on rework, maybe an application came in, it wasn't properly completed, the information were missing, it had to be returned to the employee, to the applicant to correct, right, and return. And so when we are able to measure our processes, we will find that you will pick up those areas in which we are falling short, and adjustment and improvement can be made to those processes. And so the individual who is operating in that space will now be more equipped to be guided, by the improved process. And so we won't be quick to look at the individual per se, because we're looking at, how is this process working for us? And the last challenge that the article spoke about is organizational level challenges, right? And I think this one sums it up. There are developmental economics that, look at the underperforming or underperformance of organization. And as a result of that, a number of solutions, were brought forward to observe, to protect the entity against the loss of investment, right? And so when you look at the organizational challenge, you're looking, is the organization, is it meeting its target? Is it meeting its goal, right? There are a number of things to take into consideration for the organization to be successful. And so we're saying that the article, rather, that organization need to focus on the economics of the organization. So apart from these other three challenges, there is the challenge of the organization, and we have to look at the human capital investment, which of course is a deliberate expenditure. It can be either by the individual or the organization, right? In terms of education, training, upskilling, development. And so we're saying for what HRD needs to do as it regards to this challenge is to reframe itself as core to the organization and to develop a deeper understanding of organization economics. So what this will also take into consideration is transactional cost. And when we speak about transactional cost, some of us are familiar when we're doing procurement in our organization. They will sometimes tell us to get 3 quotes and to work with the cheaper one. But the cheaper one is not always the best one.
Yeah.
And what I've come to learn is that you can opt to go with an option that is not the cheapest, providing that you can justify it. Because even as you're spending the organization money and you want to ensure, that you are negotiating and getting good deal and stuff like that, it is also important to look at quality.
Thank
It is
you
also
very much.
important to look at quality. And so while a supplier may be offering a goods or service at the minimum cost, which, we can see the organization benefiting from that, it may not make any sense because in no time that can go bad and you will have to spend again. So once you can, properly justify the need for, utilizing the supplier with the higher cost based on quality, I have seen where that has also yielded success in the procurement process. We're also saying that organizations need to develop a more holistic organizational HRD policy and supporting program aimed at economic advancement. Too often we see that not enough emphasis is spent on economic advancement. You're just going about the day-to-day with minimum awareness, of the economic and the organization's spend and expenditure and income and so to stay afloat and to maintain its operation with success, yielding high result. We're saying that, they need to support programs aimed at economic advancement. And this may mean hiring persons that have studied in this area that can contribute, to the company's overall success. And so that would have wrapped up the challenges that this article spoke about and that we could relate to as well in our organization. And so we're saying that the key takeaway that we gather was that economics already drive HRD decision, but greater focus need to be on it so that we can yield higher utility, higher result, greater success. HRD professionals are often underprepared in economic theory. And again, we find that from time to time, persons just go about the day-to-day operation without being strategic in their thinking and strategic in their decision. Worst, if the individual is not, maybe they're an officer and do not have great understanding, of how everything impacts each other. And so we're saying that, they need to be more efficient in this area or more, let's see, educated where it concerns the economic theory. Measuring return on investment and economic impact is essential. There's no way you can go about that because we go around that. We can't be spending here, spending there. When you don't have any money in this line item, you pull from that line item to support this expenditure. And at the end of the day, what is the return on investment, right? And so as we look at workforce training, one of the common factor is persons who are sponsored training to pursue, whether it is short courses, professional development courses, higher level education, tertiary masters. After you would have invest in these individuals, if the organization is doing so, when these individuals would have completed their training and is back into the workplace fully, we must see some changes, not only changes in behavior, but we should be able to see, some recommendation. We should be able to see some changes in processes and policies that would see the organization itself benefiting from what that individual would have learned, which is through the investment that the organization would have, invested in that individual. HRD must expand its economic knowledge to mature as a discipline. And this goes without saying because everything else that I've summed up can be, in this point here. Economic thinking strengthens both organizational performance and human development, because as we strengthen in terms of what the individual, what the department, what the unit has to offer, the organization is strengthened, right? And if each organization is strengthened, might I say, I dare say, our country is strengthened by extension. It's a lot of work, but I believe, if we take the time and really looking at the investment and be intentional, about what we're doing as an individual, as an organization, then little by little changes can come. And so, to wrap up this discussion, based on the article that we would have looked at, human resource development uses economic analysis tools such as cost-benefit analysis, labor supply and demand determination, cost production function analysis to investigate what is occurring in the organization. The article presented in this issue contends that a clear commitment to economic theory and practice is mandatory for the HRD profession to maximize its contribution in achieving human development and economical sound outcome. And as such, we're saying here that if HRD wants to be respected and strategically important, it must speak to the language of economics. You cannot downplay economics. Prove the financial value of HRD, learn how to integrate economic theory into research and practice. The authors made it clear that human development and economic performance are not opposite. They're connected. They go hand in hand. And once we, can defend this, I'm sure that we will get the support and the buy-in from our management and leadership team as it regards to economics in building our organization. And so this ends our presentation. And at this point, I will ask my team members, should you have any questions for me, to go ahead now. Clear as mud or clear as mud?
I'm going to ask you, Teresa, you have no questions for the class because you should have engaged the class in discussion.
Well, I should have, but my video link is kind of acting up, and so I will, from what I have just presented on, just to see if my team members, my class is with me, I'm going to ask anybody, not Tanisha, not Tobia. I was going to say not Carol, but since Carol has her hand raised, you may proceed, Miss Lindo.
All right, Teresa, good night. So I like the fact, I'm not like, let me change the word. I love the fact that you would have incorporated how the inputs and the outputs from your article really strengthens what HRD is really about. So basic school days, we know that, not basic school, primary school and high school days, we know that inputs are resources, the people, the data, the processes are the work activities, right? However, you mentioned that a lot of persons water down the training program because in procurement process, they tend to want to go for the things that are on the cheaper side. And when things are on the cheaper side, you will not get quality. You're going to get quantity and it will not be effective. And in an essence, you also stated that the training programs, they must align with the job design. Where I'm going to do a customer service and the training needs assessment did a request for a customer service. The personnel wanted training in accounting. They wanted training in procurement. They wanted training in training and development. They wanted training in emotional intelligence. But I am giving them what I want to give them. No, right? So I love the fact of how you articulated what the article was about. I read part of your article, to be honest. I didn't get to finish it completely, but you would have summed it up real good tonight, and I must say thank you for the clarity on it.
Thank you so much, Miss Linda. Appreciate that. All right. So earlier I heard Miss, just to be fair to my colleagues, since I was in the same boat with them, I heard Miss saying she didn't hear some voices. And so, Kimberly, are you here? Lavelle, are you here? Romaro, are you here? Is there any thoughts for me or questions or any clarity that you may want to add at this point so that you get an opportunity to contribute? Okay, so I guess those persons are not in class this evening. Is that right,
Well,
Miss?
if I could add, one thing that really jumped out for me was HRD also playing an important part of the process. I've never thought of HRD as, really streamlining processes and stuff like that. But throughout the presentation, I realized that the process is actually a part of the business processes and stuff like that are all a part of HRD.
Thank you so much, Andre.
But
And
wait, before you go further, explain that, please.
That's me, ma'am?
That was Andre, yes. Explain, what do you mean when you say that?
Well, again, it's through our presentation when she mentioned that a part of HRD is to help to improve the processes that are within the organization. So it's not just about developing the human capital, but what are the business processes that we have within the organization that once we can make these better, again, make it better for our staff, in a nutshell, how I kind of summarized it.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely important. And that ties back to what Karil and Tamika presented. Remember when I was asking you about that?
Yes, everything points back to training design.
To training, right? So when you look on, for example, organization performance, which was in the middle, what are the various things that contribute to organizational performance, right? So including all of the processes, all of the policies, all of the systems linked together, right? Maybe not the overall system, but all of those little system procedures, processes, all of those things. So yes, HRD has a role in looking at all of those things, and it should inform training. And very important, yes, it is not just about, as you say, like customer service and skills and stuff, but yes, so how do we develop the processes, right? How do we develop the different systems, all of the things that work to lead to improved performance? So you are definitely very correct. So sometimes we have had a limited view of what training, and remember, again, we go back to one of the first classes. We're not just looking at training and that's it. It is about learning in the organization. So what are the different things that we need to learn about that's going to lead to improved performance? So that is why it is wider than training. All right, workforce learning and development. Notice that it is wider than training. So what are all of those things that we need to learn that's going to improve the overall performance, including, yes, those procedures and those systems and so on. So definitely so, Andre. All right, definitely so.
Awesome. Thank you, Andre. I was going to add that I didn't see that connection either, until we delve in, you kind of see the link. So it's like HRD almost cannot be separated, from it's like it's the core or form part of the core of the organization if it is to succeed. And so I'm going to ask a question here and ask anyone to respond. Earlier in the presentation, Chloe would have spoken about the opportunities, and opportunity really is that it's a chance for progress or advancement and to adjust to a new environment, right? We're saying based on the review of this article that opportunity costs may be, but are not necessarily assessed in monetary terms. They can be assessed in terms of anything of value. And she listed some areas of value. Can anybody recall some of those areas that were listed as we spoke about opportunities? I believe one of them was time. All right, so I'm going to remind the team. So we're saying that while it may not be limited opportunity cost, while it may
Wait,
not.
just a minute. Did somebody just respond to that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah, I heard somebody said time.
Oh, they did?
Yes. Am I correct?
If somebody said time, they would be correct.
Yeah, I think I heard somebody said one of them was time.
Oh, I
Did I
said
hear
that. I
correct?
said one of them is time.
Oh, it's you said that, Teresa?
Yes, just to
Oh,
recall our the memory.
oh, I thought it was
Right.
somebody else that responded. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So yes, opportunity cost, while it may not be limited to monetary value, we're saying that it can be anything of value. Anything of value to include, yes, money, also time, space, and people, because we have to value our human resources, right? We have to value their time, whether it's on the job or at a training session, giving back. I think I heard Tanisha spoke to, once you would have learned something, you do some knowledge sharing, right? So the knowledge is shared and everybody benefits. And if you have a unit or a department where if somebody calls from another department or external to the entity, and while I may not be the process owner of this activity, if somebody else answers that phone and can give proper information regarding that product knowledge or otherwise, the unit, the department benefits, right? Rather than somebody calling in, making an inquiry, while it may not be Andre who is the process owner who received that call, somebody else in the same department or unit received the call, and they're not able to give any information to this external person, regarding whatever their query is. It doesn't look good, and persons may think, oh, this person don't know what they're doing, right? And so we're saying your time, your the people is important. The people is important. We foster knowledge sharing, and the department unit benefits. Later in the presentation, I spoke about some of the challenges that HRD faces and also gave some insight in terms of, what they can do to improve in these area. Can anyone share on two of those challenges based on the presentation this evening?
All right. For me, go ahead.
Did I hear Carol or someone else?
I just wanted you to repeat, Teresa.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mrs. Stewart James, what did you say?
Can you repeat?
Oh, I was asking, based on the presentation, I would have shared some of the challenges faced by HRD and also share, what they can do to improve in these areas or how they need to approach these challenges. I was just asking anyone if you recall any of these challenges and if you would like to share.
I think Sarah was answering, but let me just gather my thoughts before I answer.
Okay. Carol, you want to go ahead?
I'm having a bit of internet issue, sorry. So
Okay.
I remember you clearly stating that in a essence the HR policies, right? The training is not incorporated with the HR policy. There isn't any rewarding factor tied into some of these trainings. And how they can improve that is to ensure that if they're doing any particular training, it is tied within the policies or the HR policies of the organization. How they can ensure that the employees are being rewarded, they can tell them, all right, so by doing such and such training, you will get an incentive. Just like, for example, what Tanisha said, at the end of the year, they will get a bonus just for attending some particular trainings and being successful in them. So that actually motivate the employees, actually. So those are my insights.
Okay. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. All right. So I would have closed out the presentation earlier, but there were some key terms in this article that the authors looked at that I didn't get to share. And I just want to just touch on 3 of them that I thought was important or is important since we are looking at this whole topic. And one of them is human capital investment. And I believe I did speak on that. And I said that this is a deliberate expenditure, whether by the organization or an individual, on education, training, health, and skill development that enhances an individual's productivity, knowledge, and earning potential, right? That is human capital investment. So once you hear the term investment, you hear the term human capital, you're thinking of self, right? And you are thinking of yielding reward as it regards to investment. Then I did speak on work processes, thinking that it's not always the individual, that may be an individual may be performing not solely because of their weaknesses, but the process may be flawed. And so we looked at process to say that this is a structured step-by-step sequence of tasks, method, activities designed to achieve specific organizational goal. And from time to time, these processes need to be measured, need to be assessed to see where they are flawed, where they are not working, and where they need to be improved for greater success. And the last key term I want to share with us is human resource development investment. Resource development investment. So earlier I spoke about human capital investment, looking at self and where you can, upskill. But now we're saying human resource development investment. And this is allocating financial and operational resources to enhance employee knowledge, skills, and competencies aimed to boost organizational productivity, innovation, and competencies. So it is very similar to the human capital investment, but there is a slight difference. With that said, again, I thank you for listening. I thank you for your participation, and I hope that something will resonate with us moving forward. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Teresa and Chloe, for facilitating this presentation around opportunities and challenges for human resource development, even as we think about the economics, right, in respect to human resource development. And of course, as we are indicating, this is more than about training, but there are certain opportunities to be considered and certain challenges, even as we think about economics in relation to human resource development. And what I'm going to ask, even as we wrap up, from your perspective within the context of your operations in your respective organizations, what do you see as an opportunity for considering economics, or the challenges with considering economics in respect to human resource development in your organization? So Teresa and Chloe would have mentioned some opportunities, right, for consideration. So the time and the space and the money, yes, and other resources are things to be considered in terms of the economic opportunities that they present. And there are also challenges that should be considered, and she spoke to individual level challenges, team level challenges, work process level challenges, and organizational level challenges that have implications for how economics is considered. Which of these can you connect with in terms of what is happening in your own organization, or what might need to be considered in your own organization? And so let's look at the opportunities and let's look at the challenges. All right, so just quickly, as you connect with this within the context of your own organization.
In terms of the economics, are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead, Tobia. Mm-hmm.
All right. In terms of economics, and I think about even my own organization, I think Teresa had mentioned it earlier, wanting to get something that is maybe a little on the lower cost. And it's not just my organization. I think most organizations, they would want to explore something like that. But then when you think about the cost and benefit analysis, sometimes things that are, a little on the more affordable side, it is not the best. It does not yield the best results either. And another thing is that it could very well be that, I think she mentioned this as well, and I think even Carol, their group had mentioned something similar. We might think that this is what the person wants, yes, customer service, but yes, the customer service might be affected, for example, but is that the real training that is needed? Could it be that maybe it is how to communicate? We're not drilling down to see what the real need is, so we're spending foolishly on things that could be maybe another cause to the breakdown in production and productivity, right? So if we don't necessarily do that drill down to see what the issues are, we'll always spend foolishly, we'll always waste resources or financial resources, or we'll always get to do trainings that don't necessarily reach the root cause of the problem.
Beautiful. Thank you. And that is taking us into some of the things that were mentioned as to other economic opportunities that need to be considered. So it is not just the cost in terms of how much it costs to do the thing, as in the actual money value that you have to pay to get the thing, but there are other costs in terms of quality. And if you are looking at your output in terms of performance and how much money you actually get from that, and how much time it's going to take you to have to use something that's of less quality and what's the cost of all of that time that you have to give up, and when you use that, does it really lead to the kind of development in people that leads to the overall performance, that increase that you want, or is it just saying you got this thing? So when you calculate the true cost
Right.
beyond just the actual economic value, dollar, let's not call it economic, because all of it is economic, it's the dollar value of the thing, then you might find out that you could actually even be losing.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's part of what would have been coming out there. How do we look at true economic value, all right, in the various things that we are considering in our HRD practice, all right? Economics and economic value, right? And not just, dollar value of how much the training is going to cost, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Carol. Was Carol that spoke? No, it's Tobia. Carol, your hand is up.
To add to your point, Dr. Ferguson, because you made a very valid point just now, I can give you a real life situation. In 2017, my organization would have invested in a particular training of a batch. So they wanted to have a batch of mechanic, drivers, electricians, specialized firefighters, and they train about 120 of them. And today, from 2017 to now, that batch is about 20 of them on the job.
Oh my God.
So they would have spent millions
Mm-hmm.
to invest in the training itself, invest in getting gears for them, invest in getting uniforms, time for the money for to pay the instructors, for the place to stay and food and all of those stuff. And I don't think the organization benefited from any of it to today, 2026.
Wow.
Because most of them left the organization rapidly. When they were leaving in that intake, about 10 of them are leave in a 1 month. So you find out the purpose that they were supposed to serve, they're actually not serving it.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that. But what was the reason for training those persons, and what was the reason that led to them leaving?
They wanted to have a batch. They wanted drivers because we were short on drivers and mechanics, right? They wanted some skill firefighters. So they took them on, but their perception and coming on the job, they thought that, oh, well, I'm going to get a rank. I'm going to be paid a special allowance immediately and all of these things. They didn't know that they would have to serve a 1-year probationary period, and they would have to do an on-the-job evaluation and all of those things. And then they would have to serve 3 years in operations before they can assign to that particular specialized area. On the flip side, the organization would have now seen that they felt it. It was a stab in the heart, and
Wow.
they tried to basically try another way, train some persons from the organization to be driver. Or if they come, we train them first and let them know that, all right, even though you can drive, we know say you drive big unit before, but we're going to train you to drive our fire units before we send you out there, and this is what you're supposed to expect. These are your objectives. So you don't expect that you're going to be promoted to a sergeant and get a sergeant pay. You don't expect to be promoted immediately, or you're going to get the allowance of a driver same time. So they're now putting it out there so they can now understand that it is not just going to come all at once. You have to work for it. Right.
Wow, thank you so
Yeah,
very
but that makes it a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was I mean, a real economic issue right there, definitely, in terms of, a lot was lost. Yeah, through that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Great. All right. Yes. Teresa.
Yes, Miss. Thank you so much. So just to continue on the same conversation. So
Mhm.
it just goes to show the importance of HRD in the organization and the job that they have to do. And while I can understand that they may not always get it right, you know, what they do is important and is required. Because in Carol's organization's case, the
Mhm.
employees, they left, you know, they left, and that's a clear no return on investment right there.
Mhm.
But then you
Mhm.
also have the converse to that, in the sense that the employee stays. So just as Mrs. Stewart Tobias said earlier, Mrs. Stewart James said earlier, from time to time, you may have to do a needs assessment to see, you know, what really are the needs of this individual. Because yes, you can train in customer service and you can train in customer service, and the service quality is still poor. You know, it is still below standard. Customers are still complaining. And so that is also a fail as well in return on investment, because there's no improvement. The way, if you should do a customer service survey, you're still not going to be, you know, surpassing expectation, because we're training in this area that may not necessarily be where we need to be zooming on. What I've realized is that persons come from varied background and has varied experiences, and so you could train them from now till that kingdom come. They're still just not going to be professional. They just, I don't know, you know, and so we may have to look at something deeper. Maybe we need to do some mentorship. Maybe we need to do some coaching rather than content. And that coaching and the mentorship can be done internally, and you can understudy,
Yeah.
rather than to continue expending, pulling from the kitty, pulling from the budget to support training for this or these individual. And when they come back into the workspace, there's no change. There's no change in attitude. There's no change in performance. There's no change in output. So I say all of that to say that, you know, HRD has a job to do. And it's funny, I guess, sometimes because of the running of the day-to-day operation, they really don't even get a chance sometimes to just zoom in and to do the strategic part of the work. But we have to do the training needs assessment. And also important that I don't think a lot of us may do is the return on investment research, because it is a formal process. The return on investment research needs to be done. You would have spent billions on this training. You may have impacted 30 employees. How is the organization benefit? Have we moved from this level to, you know, a higher level? So, as I said, just continue the conversation from Tobia and Carol that HRD is critical and they have a work to do.
Yes, thank you so much. Critical have a work to do, and we need to consider the various economic costs. Yes, again, looking beyond the, you know, mere dollar value. Thank you so very much. All right, any other questions, any other comments? Still haven't heard from some people. Jerome, John, Kimberly, Lovell, Romario. Still haven't heard from any of these people tonight. Are you in the room? Romario, Lovell, Kimberly, John, Jerome.
Doc, Kim is still at work. Sorry. She's still at work. That's why you haven't heard from her.
Okay, Kim is
I just unfortunately don't have anything to add. But I'm here, I'm listening, I'm paying attention.
listening. So what have you gotten then, John? You don't have anything to add. What are you taking away?
Oh, this is Jerome.
Who is that? Jerome. Okay, Jerome, what are you taking away, Jerome? What's your takeaway from tonight? No takeaway?
Not this time, miss.
Okay. All right.
Hi, Miss. Good night.
Hi, good night. Hi, John.
It's a case where I'm on a special program and I had to be at work from after 5. And I just leave the office because it was on a project where I was building a roof for someone way in the country. And I just came back and I'm not going to be home yet, but I came in about an hour ago. I was listening, but I have a slight headache. Um, I took some parts of Teresa's presentation.
Mhm.
I couldn't really synthesize some aspects because of how I feel right now and exhausted. But just what stood out was really HRD as it relates to the economics, the risks that were highlighted in Carol's example at her workplace based on the investment. There were similarities in terms of other programs that I saw implemented at my organization and the
Right.
losses that we made based on certain employees leaving right after training, as well as recurring issues when it comes down to generic programs or training programs rather that are repeated, but customer service doesn't necessarily improve after we do those trainings. And I don't see
Mhm.
much time spent for the needs analysis to ensure that on an individual basis that that person is getting the training that they need to improve, or even if we're actually looking at the issues that you may have due to culture and how that
Mhm.
affects the employee as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, that did stood out and had similarities.
Okay. To what you find in your essays. All right.
And
Thank you
that's all
for
from me
sharing
for now.
that. Yes. All right. It does help when you add your 2 cents worth, huh? It does make a difference, and it does help to solidify the point. And also, just as you reflect on it, it helps in your own concretization of the information. All right. So thank you so very much for your interactions this evening, the presentations this evening. And I do hope that we are taking away much from the presentations. All right, so we did 2 and 4 this evening, right? Oh, 3 and 4 this evening. So we have, let me see which ones we have. 7, 8, and 9 to do. So let me just look on something. As we need to be ending now. All right, so we did. All right, so we'll do 7 next week, right? As we have outlined there. And then we'll do 8 and 9 the following week, right? Right, so we'll do 7 next week as we have outlined, and then the other 2 in the coming week. All right, gentle folks. So thank you for coming on today, and we will continue presentations next week. All right, so thank you all and have a good rest of the evening.
Same to you, Dr. Ferguson.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Night.